For those that don't recall, there was a buyout of ESL and Face It. ESL, of course, being the largest single esports property you could probably purchase in terms of how much space that it occupies. Face It being the most successful pickup games platform for CSGO. And in particular, that combined gives you a really good service. Now, one of the things that's happening a lot more frequently, you're going to see a lot of as we shift into this metaverse phase of kind of the development of tech. It's a buzzword, sure. A lot of people couldn't even really explain to you what the metaverse is. I'm going to tell you what the metaverse actually is as opposed to what they'll tell you. Basically, what they want a world that you sort of transport yourself into, typically via some form of VR or some sort of digitally tactile shopfront, storefront. And they want to offer you all the services you could get in real life from the comfort of your living room in a digital way that offers additional value for it being in the metaverse. So, for example, I can watch a movie on Netflix, can't I? Yeah, but what I can't do on Netflix currently, as it stands, is I can't actively walk through a virtual cinema and sit in virtual seats and turn around and see my virtual friends and interact with each other as we watch a movie. The metaverse wants to make that a possibility. It also wants to make it a possibility if you and the same friends don't want to continue watching the film because you don't like it, you can collectively get up, walk out of the virtual digital cinema, walk a few paces, and now suddenly you're in a digital bar playing digital pool with each other, etc. The metaverse is about offering as much as it can to you in a 3D digital environment. And as a result, people need to occupy as much territory as possible. It's why now you'll say, why is a company like X buying a company like Y? Well, it's because they want to give you everything. Everyone wants to have a shop, like an actual physical grocery store. Everyone wants to be able to give you a movie. Everyone wants to be able to give you a TV show. Everyone wants to be able to give you access to a video uploading, video sharing platform. Everyone wants to be able to give you access to an online forum. Everyone wants to give you the option to go in and listen to somebody important talk in a digital capacity, etc., etc., rinse and repeat. And a part of that obviously comes down to esports, right? Because everyone wants to be able to give you the option to compete at your favorite esport, at your favorite, times that are consistent to you. And so people are buying up now esports properties for that purpose. I have no doubt, by the way, that the Savvy Gaming Group that bought ESL and Face It, they're going to buy other media type territories, and they're going to try and occupy as much territory in the same way that an Amazon would. Think of them like that's the kind of angle they're going to go for. They're going to probably buy up a content platform and start putting esports content on it. I imagine that'll be a big part of the strategy. And that's just where we're going to go in 2022 and beyond. So anyway, that's irrelevant to the topic at hand. But, I'm just padding it out for the YouTube video, aren't I? And anything I add never offers any real value. Just read the words that I myself could read, Richard. Perhaps while wearing a hat of some sort. So the Savvy Gaming Group are completely owned by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, which obviously has a connotation to it because not everybody likes the Saudi Arabian government. Now, why would you not like the Saudi Arabian government? It's a very very interesting question. I don't want to get into too much trouble, too much difficulty, let's say, by expanding upon it at length. But let's just give a few talking points out there. So, first of all, their domestic policy is because it's a clerical state. It's they run based on their religion. They obviously anything that is deemed haram is essentially passed down into law. So and they also have almost let's say biblical levels of punishment for these things. So this includes obviously gay people being executed, imprisoned. It includes death sentences for apostates. So a little bit regressive in my opinion. You know, just in my opinion, as a very progressive guy, you know, as progressive anywhere else in the world, but to the mind of an American alt-right, of course. I don't like that very much. I don't like a government that will happily imprison or kill somebody for simply just being who they are. Then you've got the other issues, which are, by the way, spoiler, if you're Americans and you want to lay any sort of great claim to being patriots, you might want to look into that whole thing that came out years after the 9/11 Commission about how there were Saudi Arabian diplomats tied into all of that. Now, Richard, don't go down the 9/11 rabbit. I'm not gonna, guys. Don't be afraid. All I'm saying is it is a matter of public record that there were people with ties to the government, diplomats, that sort of were a bit adjacent to that whole thing. And certainly no Iraqis. Just worth mentioning, given, you know, that war and all that. You have that. You have, obviously, the wholesale funding of Wahhabist Islam, which is the typically more radical end. That is the one that you generally will find being taught in, mosques where terror atrocities have, broke out from. So you've got that. You've also got the fact that I know we're very anti-war at the moment, which is good. I don't like war. I don't like nations being bombed and civilians being killed to further imperialist agendas of any stripe. And so you might want to see what's going on in Yemen. You might also want to look into NEOM, right? You might want to look into that, how indigenous people are having their land stolen and the resistance leaders summarily executed by private police forces. There's a lot going on with the Saudi Arabian government is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot going on there. And so, if any of those things bothers you, the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, which always says we're completely independent to the Saudi Arabian government, but if you want to get access to the money, it means that the Crown Prince has to be on the board of any endeavour that you actually engage in. So, that's the Crown Prince. The person that runs the fund has to be on the board. So that's something you agree to. So it doesn't sound that independent. But that's, again, this is just, it's details, schmeetails. So anyway, Brian Ward, who is the front-facing person from Savvy Gaming, decided that what he was going to do was do a little interview with Kevin Hitt, you know, a guy that I know, a guy I rate as a journalist, obviously Esports Journalist of the Year. Wanted to clarify publicly that they are not part of the Saudi state. They are not. Okay, so, well, it's interesting because you are entirely funded by the Saudi state and have the Crown Prince on the board of your company. So I was really intrigued at what he was getting, like, how could you have this sort of separation? So let's see. Sitting in, I love it when interviews do this. This is classic. Sitting in his San Francisco hotel room in the early afternoon, waiting for the day's events at the Games Developer Conference to get underway, Savvy Gaming Group CEO Brian Ward is looking forward to his first meal of the day. Ever since January's reveal of the Savvy Gaming Group, the Saudi Arabian-based esport and gaming investment company funded by the country's public investment fund, Ward's world has become a whirlwind of travel, meetings, company building, interviews, and more. There's a joke there. I'm not going. I was going to go beheadings and more, but I'm not going to do that. That's cheap. And even though there was an announcement in the news that Saudi Arabia excelled for the number of public executions held in a day just last month, with 81, I believe it was. I'm not gonna do it. It's cheap. I'm better than that. But this isn't new to Ward. A former Activision Blizzard executive with over 26 years of experience in esports and gaming. He knew this was just the beginning, especially after the announcement that the Savvy Gaming Group was in the process of buying and merging the two largest esports tournament operators and production companies for $1.5 billion. The two companies, Cologne-based ESL and London-based Faceit, who had been fierce rivals for years, had merged to become the ESL Faceit Group under SGG. First of all, there was a great story around ESL Faceit for the industry, Ward said via a video call. And the announcement, was more about that and the combination of those two entities than what Savvy could do in terms of fueling growth for the future. That was sort of a sub-story in our view. Now, let's pick up on that point, right? Let's just pick up on that point. Saying that's like the biggest story, I mean, it is and it isn't, because, you know, the reality is someone was always going to lose, and both companies had been losing, and it was about who could lose slowest. If you knew anything behind the scenes, you know, both of these companies were sort of hemorrhaging cash. They'd got to a point where they couldn't even mount a sustained assault on the other one. Face it, had essentially given up on tournament organization with the end of Flashpoint as we knew it. Flashpoint had made no staunch challenge towards ESL whatsoever. ESL were hemorrhaging cash. To a point where they needed the Louvre agreement to even keep the Pro League alive. You know, if you ever wonder why it was so brutally unfair that ESL just cut all those teams out and just said, go fuck yourself. Well, the reason they had to do it the way they did it was because it was that or nothing. You know, they needed a complete new structure where people were willing to come in and pay for those slots, and they couldn't just give those slots. I mean, this is their rationale. I don't give a fuck. As far as I'm concerned, they robbed those teams, and they still haven't atoned for it. That's my opinion. That's Richard Lewis's opinion. I'm just giving you the ESL viewpoint here. Their viewpoint is that they couldn't afford to essentially allow these lesser American organizations to hold on to these slots that they could realistically get up to 5 million for. That's why they did what they did. But anyway, both these companies were losing and were going to have to sell or shutter. And it was inevitable. It was just on the clock. And yeah, they vitriolically hated each other for a long, long time. All the other companies in the space hate ESL. There's many good reasons to hate ESL. You know, they poach people's best staff. They're deliberately obtuse when it comes to cooperation. They will only collaborate if they get a sense that you could actually turn the screws to them. See Blast, for example. Blast still produce a much better product. The only thing ESL have that Blast sort of needs is the territory in the calendar. ESL gave up a little bit of that to play nice with Blast, so Blast don't fucking stick it to them somewhere down the road. Because right now, how it could have gone, this is pre-buyout, obviously. If there was a Blast tournament on at the same weekend as an ESL tournament, I know which one the community would watch. And again, obviously, there's like little dependent bits, like what teams are playing, etc. In general, if I said 2 equal caliber matches were on at the same time, one produced by Blast, one produced by ESL, you would all watch Blast. That's just how it is. And ESL know that. And that's why they didn't want to even get into this murky world where they were clashing with each other. That's why they gave up the territory. Because they acknowledge that they're behind. And that's how ESL always do it. If you ever get anything off ESL's table, you're in a position of strength. And personally, I think you should go for more. Anyway, the fact that they merge, so a lot of people probably don't realize this. The merger was going to go ahead anyway. I'm pretty sure it was going to go ahead anyway. I'm pretty sure they'd had talks about it because Face It had killed ESL in a key area, which was the pugging stuff, because ESEA was dead as a platform. They'd also shown, you know, some of the areas and aspects to what they could do. You know, they've got, you know, there's obviously crossover as well with the anti-cheat technologies. They're both different, you know. And ESL obviously have all of the infrastructure, the physical offices, all of the calendar, all of the big sponsor connections, including the Intel contract. So that move was just something that was going to happen behind the scenes, even though both parties absolutely despise each other and have been at each other's throats for at least 10 years. To say that's the biggest story, though? Nah, it isn't. It's an interesting story for industry people. In terms of the average person and how it's going to affect you, a plain old merger between ESL and Face It, and ESL and Face It merged, that was still losing money and still in potentially dire straits. Functionally, that's no different. An ESL and Face It merger that doesn't have to lose money because you've got this Saudi Arabian slush fund, well, that's now got the potential to be a game changer. And while the esports world gasped in surprise as the news broke, questions surrounding SGG and its relationship to the Saudi Public Investment Fund soon followed. Just who was the Savvy Gaming Group? Why is it in league with Saudi Arabia? Didn't they know that esports in Saudi Arabia are like water and oil due to the fans' perception of the country's view on human rights? Did it not see what happened to both the League of Legends European Championship and Blast Premier, which had to walk back partnerships with Saudi Arabia and its Neon project, the planned smart city in the northwest of the country? People were looking for answers. While Savvy Gaming Group made top brass from the ESL Face It group available, the group's executives were unavailable at the time. Influential people claimed that they were ducking the hard questions they knew were coming. So, we might have revealed a little more than some people would have intended initially, Ward said. Not that there was anything wrong with it, it's exactly what we're doing. And while there's nothing wrong with the actual message, we're going to have more of a cadence in what we reveal and how we reveal. We are ensuring our messaging is consistent with not only what our community expects, but with what our shareholders expect. We're still working on what the website messaging should be. So in other words, right, first of all, yeah, we probably shouldn't have led with the fact that we were owned by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund entirely. We didn't have to give that away. And we wish we hadn't. That's how I read that. When they start talking about what our shareholders expect, I have to say, I think there's kind of one entity that's more important than all of the others. And that is, of course, the Saudi Arabian kingdom, isn't it? So, listen, what they're saying there is they should have held more back. And we shouldn't have been as transparent as we were, which I think is reprehensible because, and also counterproductive. I guarantee that if we'd got to a point where it later came out like a journalist had exposed it was entirely owned by the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, people would have been mega pissed off that they didn't know about that going up front and had been more supportive of the move. Now, there's a ton of other issues with this that we'll get to. We said some stuff later on. But you have to understand that depending on where you are, you know them like fucking political graphs where it's a cross and it's like authoritarian left, authoritarian right, you know, all of that shit. Depending on where you are on this sort of like graph in how it interfaces with capitalism, there are a number of people, by the way, who think actually it's okay to take the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund money, that it's used in a number of companies, that, hey, even Disney takes it, as if that's some sort of barometer of what's good or acceptable. For me, just so people know, because I had a lunatic stalker that was like spamming me for a few days, saying I'd betrayed every LGBT friend in my life because I was taking money from Saudi Arabia, because we publicly disclosed we'd had talks with Face It to fund a company we were starting before they got bought. And then we shut off the talks and said we won't take the money if it's Saudi. And some deranged person harassed me for about a week off the basis of that. But anyway, I made it clear I wouldn't take the money. There was a number of people who were sort of like, they're okay with it. They think basically that money is sort of fine to take, and if you don't, someone else will. And I don't want it. I don't want Saudi Arabian money until they fall in line with what I consider a civilized country in terms of human rights. I don't want a penny from them. That's just me. But I mean, it was a lot of money. I mean, it completely changed how we had to fund the company, how quick this company was getting put together and everything. But and as I said, that money, by the way, is going to be in a ton more esports stuff. This is just the beginning for the Savvy Gaming Group, let alone any more Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund. Regular viewers on the stream will know. I've been telling you the Saudis have been coming for ages. I've had invites to go out there and go on yachts and meet people. I just don't care about any of that shit. It's not for me. It's not my world. I don't want it to be my world. I would rather esports was free of all of this shit, frankly, but sports washing comes everywhere. So gaming and esports are increasingly concerned with the rights and representation of women and those in the LGBTQ plus community. The gaming world wanted to know how SGG is going to handle the issues associated with being based in a country with views contrary to the promotion and safety of those groups. Yet SGG didn't address these issues at launch. So Brian Ward said, I have 2 younger daughters, and my view, along with my wife's view from the outset, was that our job was to raise 2 strong independent women. Okay, good. I would be pretty hypocritical if I went to some place and was doing something that was contrary to what we had been teaching our girls for the last 15 years. I don't think I would have been very happy with that juxtaposition. That's the answer to the question, by the way. That's the answer to the question. There is no further elaboration on that. So just so you know, by the way, those strong, independent girls that you've raised, congratulations on doing that. Sounds like you're a great parent. If those strong, independent women were to go to Saudi Arabia and express those strong, independent views, they'd probably be given the lash, imprisoned, certainly deported. That's who you're in bed with business-wise. Next up, I mean, sure, we can even get to the women's rights issues. And I've said it before, and people think it's a joke, but actually Saudi Arabia has made progress on women's issues. It's frightening to call it progress, but it is progress from where they were. And it talks about that a little bit in the next paragraph. But that, to me, is not a catch-all. I've raised my children to be strong and independent. How do you reconcile working with a country where that would be irrelevant? You haven't answered that part. Ward went on to note, there is a spike in women working, and this is the thing, whenever you're in this fucking hole, when it comes to talking about Saudi Arabian progress, you can't help but make it absurd. Because where they were compared to where they are now, and like literally, by the way, the Crown Prince that's allowing these things to go ahead is called, like, he's too moderate for the hardliners. They don't like it. They don't like what he's doing, but he's doing it anyway. And it's so absurd, by the way, that these are things that need to be done in a society. But here it is. Ward went on to note, there is a spike in women working in Saudi Arabia. Jobs for women. A simple Google search shows that the rate has increased from 22% to 33% in the past 2 years. And as far as gaming goes, Nico Partners, no connection. The Silicon Valley-based gaming analytics and research firms estimates that of the just over 65 million gamers in the MENA3 region, which includes Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt, 38.8% are women. The Savvy Gaming Group CEO is happy with the change he is seeing as it relates to women in the workplace, but he's also seeing a cultural change as well, which he believes is going to continue to evolve Saudi Arabia. It's one of the biggest reasons he accepted the role as CEO. I think I've surprised a few people at the shareholder level and in the HR department when I said this, but I think as of a couple of years ago, there were 16% of the executive ranks in our industry are women, which is pretty pathetic, said Ward. For Ward, that isn't close to being enough. See how he's done a nice little pivot here? It's like, let's talk about other sexism. I said, look, there are some things that are going to take us longer to achieve in terms of demonstrating our ability to respect the values and culture of our industry, but there's some things that we can do right away, like hiring women. I said at the C-level, in the operating companies, we need to have 20% women, not 16 CEOs, but 20%, which we've done now. Below that, it needs to be 33%, and we're on target towards that. At the Savvy C-level, it needs to be 50%, and I think we're going to hit that target too. There's a lot in there, right? Now, I'm just going to add, I am sick and tired of this excuse being used when you take blood money. It's a particularly pernicious one. It doesn't go away, and people say it all the time. They go, oh, by doing business with these countries, they will adopt our values. Has that ever happened yet? Has anyone seen an example of this actually happening? I'm waiting on it. I'm still waiting in my lifetime. You know, yeah, we'll do all this business with China, and that will make them less racist. They will never force us to bend our knee to get their money. Oh, wait, we do that all the time. Didn't work, did it? Didn't work. China didn't move an inch. They didn't move a solitary fucking inch. Been getting progressively worse. It's progressively less free over there than it has been for a long time. Sure, we've all seen the footage recently. It's like something out of fucking Blade Runner, except not as cool, where it's just a drone going, get into your house, get into your house, do not stream video games, do not watch the subversive Western movies. Yeah, brilliant. They've really adopted those values. I love it when executives from the fucking CDC, when they're asked, from the World Health Organization, my bad. I love when they're asked, how did Taiwan handle the pandemic? Well, we've already talked about China, so yeah, I love that. I love how they're adopting our values and we're definitely not adopting theirs. I'm so sick of that being an excuse because it never works. And by the way, while this guy might be a fucking moderate now, his replacement might not be. His replacement might be a fucking hardline theological nutjob. And suddenly you're saddled with a business partner you can't get rid of that actually is like, listen, I don't like women's leagues. I think that's haram as fuck. That's a level of haram that is above haram as fuck. I don't want that. So we're not doing that anymore. We're not putting any money into those initiatives anymore. Don't say it can't happen. By the way, if anyone tells you that isn't something that could happen when you are completely beholden to the Saudi Arabian state, they're lying to you. Because it could happen. The young people in Saudi Arabia, because he says here that he believes the Saudi Arabian nation is ready for change. The young people in Saudi Arabia have the same hopes and dreams, aspirations and plans for their future as young people everywhere. To go to a place where they not only want me to try and build something super exciting and great in the industry, but to help them transform their country, I thought that's pretty cool. These people are serious about it. Everyone is excited. It's a super young country, 70% of the people are under 30. Also, yeah, young people do like cool things. I'm still not seeing. It's not like they can go out and force widespread change. If they can, they're certainly not doing that just yet. And we'll get to the catchphrase elephant in the room in a moment. Ward sounds sincere in his words, but as he knows all too well, and will tell you, people don't want to be told things. They want to be shown things. It's one of the reasons Ward says is why the Savvy Gaming Group didn't do a complete PR campaign about the launch. You see, the reason they went and hid after people were like, well, what the fuck's up with this? Now that you're owned by Saudi Arabia, it's just because they were like, listen, there's no point in doing PR. There's no point in answering hard questions because everyone's so cynical and jaded in esports, right? It's not because of fucks like you doing shit like this. By the way, a guy with zero credibility in the esports space. I don't care. You worked at Activision Blizzard. You didn't work on the esports division. You were a fucking suit at Activision Blizzard, one of the worst companies in all of gaming. A company, by the way, that's been putting out inferior products at worse prices with worse consumer practices, all the while treating its staff like shit, treating the female staff like shit. Tell me more about them strong daughters that you raised while you've been at Activision Blizzard for 26 fucking years. Didn't notice anything amiss? And your entire time there, over 2 decades of the company, never heard anything, never saw anything? Incredible. Really incredible. Yeah, I'm glad that you're a guy who now gets to say, hey, I'm a good dude. I'm a good dude, and I totally vouch for the Saudi Arabian government, actually. I think they're misunderstood. But anyway, he says, I think our community, it ain't yours, buddy. I think our community is very cynical and jaded. It's very much a show me, don't tell me group. They don't want to be sold anything. So we thought the best way to illustrate what we're trying to do is just go out and do it. Say what we intend to do without the need to be flashy, and then do what you say. With ESL and Face It, that was one of the reasons we weren't more vocal about Savvy. There was a great story around ESL and Face It for the industry. Again, he's revisiting that talking point. He obviously had that in his Cliff's notes. Now, with fans and media wanting to know more about the Savvy Gaming Group and what it means to the gaming and esports space, Ward has come forward to talk, giving answers to those ethical and moral questions. But that brings us to what SGG really is as a company. Many fans and gaming and esports executives had no idea what SGG was and what it is. Ward explains. Number one, this is another constant excuse from all the people that take blood money, you'll notice. We're a fully commercial entity. We're operating like any other company, although we have one shareholder. So that might be different than some other companies. We're not part of the Saudi state, despite who our chair is. The chair of the 7-member board to which Ward is referring is Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is considered the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia. And when asked how concerned he was with having the Crown Prince as the chair when doing business with North America and Europe, Ward had this to say. We are a 100% PIF-owned company, but we are also a fully commercial entity, and we are all committed to driving the growth of the gaming sector and to facilitating greater, more inclusive and more equitable access to this fast-growing, dynamic industry. Given our global mandate, we are in constant conversation with partners and potential partners across the world to ensure that we pursue our mandate in a manner that is consistent with the values and culture of the global gaming community. In fact, SGG already has investments in other companies in Saudi Arabia, encompassing areas such as venue and event arenas, game development, incubation and acceleration, and more. This recurring phrase of we're a commercial entity, it's coded language. And what they're trying to tell you is, because we want to make money first and foremost, we'd never discriminate, we'd never do anything bad, we'd never do anything in line with what the Saudi Arabian government does domestically. We're going to operate like a nice, benevolent Western company, which, by the way, also hilarious if you know anything about these nice, benevolent Western companies. But that's what the coded language is there to tell you. It's to tell you that even though we know the Saudi Arabian government is prejudicial, and even though we know they violate human rights in all these disgusting ways all around the world, and they have ties to some absolutely atrocious groups, what we're saying is that will never affect us because we want to make money above anything else. And anything that will stop us making money will not be allowed to happen here. As if that greed-driven imperative is something to be desired because it will keep human rights violations and discrimination away from the door. Isn't that wonderful? The power of capitalism, ladies and gentlemen. So, no, he's not done a great job of selling it, has he really, Brian Ward's? AKA Paulie Walnuts. He's not done the best. I'll read the last bit and then we'll get to what he left out. Why was the ESL Face It group deal first? Asked Kevin. And it said, the ESL Face It group deal happened to be first for a couple of reasons. One, ESL Face It was already running an SPAC process whereby they were going to list themselves publicly in the United States. So they already had a process underway where they asked us whether we were interested in participating in, and we decided that wasn't the vehicle for us, but we were interested in the asset, and that led to the transaction that ended up being done. So in other words, Face It were going to list on the stock exchange. People were going to come in and, potentially buy shares. They were already maybe looking at it as a merger type thing in the background. They thought, fuck it, why not just swoop in and buy the lot? Now, I can't help but notice, right, that while there was a little bit of talk about women, wasn't a lot of talk, was there, about the LGBTQ, which was brought up by Kevin. That was all just completely left on the table, wasn't it? No questions about that. No questions about, hey, listen, do you know what would be really good? If we did an esports fundraiser for LGBTQ charities, wouldn't that be nice? And what can ESL do that now? And if we could we have the grand finals in Saudi Arabia at one of these venues that you've bought? Could we do that? We can't do that. Well, why not? Thought it wasn't going to impact on how we do things. GG for all, I thought. But no, it is of course nonsense. That will not happen. The women's issues, by the way, because there's been a wind of change blowing in Saudi Arabia where women can vote now, women can, and have been able to for a while. Women can drive now, have been able to for a while. Women can even dress slightly less modestly. Not too wild, but they can. And we still saw it, if I remember rightly. There was an influencer got arrested in Saudi Arabia for showing too much skin in public while taking pictures for Instagram. But there is a wind of change blowing in Saudi Arabia in general. So the women's stuff is they'll talk about that. They will not talk about gay people. They will not talk about trans people. And whether or not when they do run, and they will be running events, by the way, out in Saudi, and they are going to look to hire their top tier talent to go and work at it. By the way, I'll be sat here watching, seeing who goes, seeing who doesn't. Going to be enjoying that one. Certainly, I'm going to just tell you straight, it is not, but no pun intended, it's not safe for gay people to go. Of course it isn't. It's not safe for trans people to go to Saudi. Of course it isn't. And I'm so sick and tired of people saying to me, oh yeah, but if you go out, as long as you don't flaunt it, right? You get this a lot from like fans in that region. Listen, of course you can come, as long as you don't flaunt it, you'll be okay. As long as you don't flaunt it. By the way, that's like the stuff that the bigots over here used to say. That's how you end up with Section 28. For those that don't know, in my lifetime, there was a piece of legislation that was voted in the 80s as we came off the back of the AIDS crisis, where, stop me if you've heard this one before, a right-wing government leveraged fear of the unknown to pass through discriminative legislation against gay people. And what Section 28 was that if you were you couldn't say anything that made homosexuality an equivalent, acceptable lifestyle to homosexuality in schools. A real don't say gay bill, you might say. And we had that, and it didn't get repealed until 2003. So think about that. Young me saw that bill get passed, went to school with it, and then old me marched against it by the time I was at university to get it repealed. And I can tell you, no teacher wanted to admit they were gay back then, not in British schools. When I went, it was dangerous. You could lose your job. You could be prosecuted. If they considered, so if I said to a teacher, hey, Mr. Smith, are you gay? Right? And he said, yes, I am. And I have a wonderful relationship with my boyfriend. We're thinking about adopting a child. And we went, yay, that's awesome. Love you, Mr. Smith. If a parent got wind of that, they would have government purview for that teacher to be prosecuted, during which, by the way, he would be suspended while being investigated. And so we knew we had gay teachers at school, but they couldn't talk about it in any way, shape or form. Because if it was considered, because again, another myth that bigots use is that because gays don't have kids, this was literally argued in Parliament, by the way. This was an argument that was, it's there, you can go look it up, it's on the public record. Gay people have to recruit. What they do is, big gay infiltrates schools, and then they wait until no one's looking. This is serious. This is all, look it up, just type in Section 28. There's a whole Wikipedia page. I'll do a stream about it one day. I'll educate you. It's mental. Big gay infiltrates the schools. And they say, basically, when no one's looking, the gays go, right, kids, listen, yeah, being a gay's wicked. It's fucking wicked. And you should totally do it. And yeah, I'll be holding secret gay classes after school where it's, like, of course, none of that is going on. And none of that has ever gone on in the history of the world, I don't think. But that was literally argued in Parliament as to why we had to stop any kind of, you couldn't have the teachers say they were gay. So Anyway, point being, back to this. This is what I mean. It's like, I've seen shit like that. And don't tell me it's any different in Saudi Arabia. Don't tell me if you don't flaunt it, you'll be fine. You won't go to prison. Because it's not good enough. What do you mean, don't flaunt it? What do you mean? Can't hold my boyfriend's hand in a country? Like, all right, I can go to prison for that. Fuck that. Fuck co-signing that. Fuck co-signing that. Just saying, like, and again, guys, I know from other esports events gone past, let's just say people have been told, like, privately, you know, like, hey, if we go to this country, you know, listen, just if you could just tone it down. Nah, bollocks to that. So I want answers. I want real answers about, you know, like, someone's got to hold these guys' feet to the fire, because they're pretending they are completely separate to the Saudi state, while their one shareholder is the Saudi state, and on the board is the guy who runs the Saudi state. By the way, this just went up on Reddit and nobody cared. just uncritical, you know. So there you go. Brian Ward thought he could get away with that. Not on my watch. We're going to wait and see what happens next.